Hello, ladies. Hello. Hello, Julie. Hello, Wendy. Thanks, Wendy, for letting me know you can hear me and see me. Just finishing getting the setup done. Just give it a couple of minutes. It's just hello, ladies. Just waiting for a few more people to drop in. How's everyone's day been? Mine's been, Wendy was aware that I've had a pretty crazy couple of weeks, and today was no different. It just seems to be the way things are at the moment. Hi, Nikki. How are you? Doing really well on your 28-day reset, I gather from your messages, which is fantastic. Oh, Wendy, I hope you went well with your appointment with your neurologist. I'll give it one more minute and then we'll get started. I picked up my goddaughter this afternoon. Oh, beautiful, Wendy. That is great. He was actually on the case, not going backwards and forwards. Gorgeous. I like the idea of another approach, given all those medications are just no doubt compounding the problems. Okay. So right on 7. There's always going to be women who'll drop in later. I could sit here for half an hour before everybody drops in. There's over 40 people registered, but we're here. That's what counts. That is the main thing. And the fact that you can see me and hear me is wonderful. I'm going to turn my video off. Main reason is it's being recorded, and the recording actually puts my takes up a third of the screen if I keep the video on. So I am going to turn the video off and I am going to get started. So ladies, hope you've got a drink. I was going to show you on the camera and I've just turned it off. I've got a couple of glasses of lemon water lined up here. Okay, so as I said, hope you settle in, grab whatever it is you need. And said, I've got my couple of glasses, but I'm the one doing the talking and then I get a dry throat. So let's get started. Today we're talking about something I hear from women all the time. I'm doing, see, I keep on talking as if I'm talking to the camera. I'm doing everything right. So why isn't my weight changing? I was going to do a little inverted commas there. And what I want to tell you from the beginning, that this is not going to be another class about 5 reasons weight loss gets harder after 40, because you can all Google that. You can all ask AI and you probably already know. And because if you're anything like most of the women I speak to, you already know quite a lot. You've read the articles, you've watched the reels, you've listened to the podcasts, you've probably tried more than a few things yourself, and yet you're still left wondering, what am I missing? That's the conversation I want to have today. Because sometimes the problem isn't that you're missing another piece of information. Sometimes it's working out which pieces actually matter in your situation. So, maybe you're eating well, you've increased your protein, you're walking, you've been told strength training is important, so you're trying to do that as well. You've cut down on sugar. Maybe you've cut back on carbohydrates. Perhaps you've tried intermittent fasting. Maybe you've bought some magnesium, maybe the collagen. maybe something for your cortisol that's popular at the moment, maybe something marketed specifically for menopause, and still your waistline isn't really changing. Or perhaps the scales aren't moving. Your clothes feel different. Your body composition has changed. And at the same time, maybe your sleep isn't what it was. Your energy isn't great. You've developed cravings you didn't used to have. Your digestion has changed. And somewhere underneath all of this is that incredibly frustrating thought. But I'm doing the things, all the things. What am I still doing wrong? So if you're sitting there thinking, yes, that's me, you're exactly who I want in this conversation. Because when a woman says all of that to me, my first thought isn't, right, I know what you need to do. My first thought is, I want to know more. Because my weight isn't shifting gives me a symptom, but it doesn't yet give me the story. How many of you would say, I'm already doing quite a few things, quite a few of those things? Pop it in the chat. How many of you think you're already moving more, eating more protein? And Nikki, you're excluded because you're on the program and you are shifting on one of my programs and you are shifting weight. You are doing the 28-day reset and you are shifting weight. It's frustrating when the husband doubles that weight loss. How many think you're already doing some of those things or all of those things? Have you tried cutting down sugar, carbs? Have you tried intermittent fasting? What a quiet group here tonight. Maybe collagen, maybe something for the cortisol. Going quite well. Need to commit to more exercise. Yep. Have some success with pinch of bicarb sodas. Fantastic. I'm just reading Nikki's comment. Sleep and energy definitely better. Sleep and energy better. What more could you hope for? Loving the 28-day recipe reset. Yep. And my husband is enjoying the food too. That makes it so much easier, isn't it? If your husband likes the food that you're cooking that's working for you. And when I'm doing most, I think my next step will be doing the 28-day reset. Yeah, so different things for different people at different stages. The rest of you are very quiet, but that's okay. You'll warm up. You'll know I'll ask lots of questions as we go through the evening. So for those of you who are new to my world, a really, really brief bit about me. My name is Sally, that you already know. I work solely with women in midlife. I love finding out what others miss by asking the right questions and looking at the whole person. I've crashed and burnt, not just once, but twice, picked myself up, brushed myself off, recalibrated, relearned, and it is from experience that I teach and support from that lived experience, along with being a mum, a nonny, a wife, daughter, sister to many, but also 40 years of clinical experience in diagnostic medical imaging and naturopathy with a lot of other modalities along the way. Look what happens when I actually go to a hairdresser and I control my frizz. So I want you to think about this for yourself. Sorry, I said all that so quickly. I'll just slow down now because I don't think anybody wants to really know about me. What have you assumed is stopping your weight from changing? Maybe you've thought it's menopause, it's estrogen, it's cortisol, it's insulin, it's my metabolism. I'm eating too much. I'm eating too many carbohydrates. I'm not exercising enough. Maybe you've even thought, it's just my age now. But here's where I want to make a distinction we're going to come back to throughout today. Every one of those things could potentially be worth considering, but possible isn't the same as proven. If a woman tells me my waist has changed since menopause, of course, hormones are something I'm interested in, but I also want to know what else changed over those years. Did your job become more desk-based? You're moving less without realizing it. Has your sleep changed? Has your alcohol intake changed? Did you stop strength training? Has your muscle mass changed? Did your eating pattern change? Did you start caring for aging parents? Did your stress load increase? Did medication change? I'm not saying any of those things is the answer either. What I am trying to say is I don't want to decide before I've asked. That's an important part of how I work. Curiosity is not diagnosis. And I think we've become very good in health and wellness at jumping from, symptom to explanation. Cortisol belly, insulin resistance, estrogen dominance, slow metabolism. But a plausible explanation isn't automatically your explanation. Which assumption have you ladies made? Let's see if the shy ones will answer. Have you thought it's hormones or cortisol or insulin or age or metabolism or something else? Have you decided that it's one of those common thoughts? You're welcome, Nikki. I just saw you. Thank you so much. You're so welcome. All right, shy ladies. Imagine two women sitting in front of me. They both say exactly the same thing. Sally, I eat well, I exercise, and I can't lose this weight. If that's all I know, do I know they need the same thing? No. One might have gradually become more sedentary over the last 5 years while continuing to eat exactly the same as she always has. One might be training 5 days a week, eating less and less, sleeping 5 hours, and running on adrenaline. One might be skipping breakfast, having a tiny lunch, and then wondering why she's ravenous by late afternoon. One might be eating very consistently, but have several other symptoms that make me want to widen the investigation. Same complaint, but already potentially very different stories. So one of the ideas I really want you to take away today is the same symptom doesn't necessarily tell the same story. The weight tells me something has changed. It doesn't by itself tell me what. And this matters particularly because of who I know is sitting in this room. So I want you to think about it. Would you have assumed these two women probably needed roughly the same advice? They came into saying, I can't shift the weight, I eat well, I exercise, and I can't lose weight. Do you think that everybody needs the same approach? Right? Because weight itself is weight gain is a symptom, or difficulty shifting weight is a symptom. We have to look at what the cause is, the root cause. You're probably not a woman who has never thought about your health. You wouldn't be here if you've never thought about your health. Most women who find me aren't. You probably know protein matters. It's all over social media, right? You know resistance training matters. It's all over social media, and every personal trainer tells you that. You've heard that maintaining muscle is about maintaining muscle as you get older. You've heard about blood sugar. You've heard about cortisol. You know sleep matters. You know fiber matters. You know menopause can change things. You may have spent years learning about nutrition, and some of you are incredibly disciplined. So I don't want to insult you by spending 45 minutes telling you to eat more vegetables, drink more water, and go for a walk. You know all that. And that's why I think that this distinction is so important. Knowing isn't necessarily your problem. You can know 20 things that might help a midlife woman and still not know which 3 matter most for you. There's a difference between information and interpretation. Information tells us here are things that can influence weight in midlife. Interpretation asks which of these appears relevant here and what deserves attention. What might be secondary? What needs investigating? What don't we know yet? That's the work I'm doing when I'm listening to a woman. I don't need to know the answer the moment she sits down. I know what questions I want answered before deciding. And I actually think that's more useful. Think for a moment. What is one thing you've been doing right that your body doesn't seem to respond to anymore? Maybe it's eating less. Maybe exercising more. Maybe fasting. Maybe eating low carb. Maybe simply doing what always worked for you for 10 years ago. I want you to hold that thought because I want to introduce you to a woman I see versions of all the time. She's in her mid-50s. She's intelligent. She's motivated. And if you ask her what she's tried, she'd probably laugh and say, "How long have you got?" Because she didn't start out trying everything. It happened gradually. Her weight started creeping up, so she did what had always worked before. She cut back a bit. Nothing much happened. Then she read that carbohydrates were the problem after menopause. So bread went, then pasta, then potatoes. Maybe fruit is a bit suspicious. Nothing really shifted. Then she heard protein was the answer. So now she's trying to get 100 grams of protein a day. Then someone tells her women over 50 shouldn't be eating breakfast because fasting will improve insulin resistance or boost the metabolism. So breakfast goes. And then she sees an ad telling her fasting is actually stressing her hormones. So breakfast comes back in. Then it's calories, then it's steps, then it's strength training, then a menopause supplement, then something for cortisol, then something for blood sugar. And every one of those strategies sounds plausible. That's important. She's not doing ridiculous things. She's trying to make sense of conflicting information. But every time the next thing doesn't work, there's another tiny erosion of trust. Why can't I get this right? And then there must be something else I'm missing. Does that feel familiar to everyone? Because the problem here isn't necessarily that she hasn't found the right Instagram account to follow. Before I give her another strategy, I want to understand the strategies she's already tried. And as I say to so many people, I look at what you have tried and hasn't worked, or maybe just worked a little bit, or maybe just worked for a little bit of time, because what you've tried and has worked or hasn't worked tells me something else. So this is where my questions start. What changed? What changed first? What else was happening around that time? What had she already tried? And what happened when she tried it? Now, those aren't questions I'm asking because the first thing that changed must be the cause. It may be, it may not be. And often women can't remember the exact sequence anyway. We're not trying to conduct a forensic investigation of 2019. We're looking for clues. So perhaps one woman says, my weight really started changing when my periods became irregular. Okay, useful. Then I ask what else was happening, and she says, well, actually, that was around the time I took the management position and started working from home. Interesting. Then, oh, my mum became unwell that year too. And that's probably when my sleep started going haywire. Now our picture is already wider than menopause equals weight gain. It doesn't mean menopause isn't relevant. It means menopause isn't the only thing I know. Right. Another woman might tell me nothing really changed except the weight. Fine. That's useful too. Different answer, different questions next. So if you're thinking about your situation, what else was happening around the time your body started feeling different? Not because that automatically caused it. Just notice what else belongs in the picture. So I want you to think about your own timeline. No need to share. Just think about yourself and your situation. And then I want to know what happened when, when I'm speaking to this lady, what happened when she tried things? Because a strategy that didn't work can still give us information. One woman tells me I cut carbohydrates and initially lost weight, but after a few months, nothing changed. Another says I tried low carb and felt absolutely dreadful. I was exhausted and I couldn't train. And often what I actually hear is women, they still train, but they don't train at the same capacity. They can't push themselves. They can't extend themselves. Another lady might say, I fasted and I was fine until about 4 o'clock. Then I wanted to eat the whole cupboard, the whole kitchen, the whole fridge, the whole pantry. Another might say, I fasted and actually felt great. Another might say, I counted every calorie, every mouthful for 6 weeks and absolutely nothing happened. Those are not the same responses, and I don't want to flatten them into low carb works. Fasting is bad for women, or you just didn't stick to it long enough. I want to know what happened because her response becomes part of the picture. And sometimes a woman says, well, it worked. I lost 6 kilos. And I'll ask, then what happened? I couldn't live like that anymore. So it all came back. That's information too. Because an intervention that only works while your entire life revolves around maintaining it may not be the sustainable answer we're looking for. I am sure we all know that if we follow the cabbage soup diet for a month, we'll lose weight, but oh my goodness, where's our muscle gone? And is it sustainable? So with our frustrated trier, the one that keeps trying everything and gets very frustrated, the answer wasn't simply, here is strategy number 12. Think of one thing you've tried and what actually happened when you tried it. Have you tried eliminating carbs? Have you tried intermittent fasting? Have you tried calorie counting? Have you tried smaller portions? And what happened? And once we stood back and looked at her fuller picture, what became obvious was that she needed stability before more change. For her, that's important. I'm not telling every woman watching this that stability is automatically your answer. I'm saying that when we understood her picture, it became the sensible priority. And notice where that answer came from. Not from, I'm a woman over 50 and I can't lose weight. It came from everything surrounding that statement. What she'd been doing, how she'd responded, what else had changed, what she'd been asking her body to manage. And this is where I want to introduce one of the maps I use because it explains why order matters. Not because this map can diagnose you, because it can't, but because it gives you a way to think about what deserves attention first. And we all need a good starting point. The thing that bothers you most isn't necessarily where I begin. And I was just talking to the ladies in the coaching call with the group on Monday night about your loudest symptom, the squeaky wheel, the thing that's squeaking the loudest, is not necessarily where we start. Right? And that's sometimes frustrating because if you've come to me saying, Sally, I need to lose 10 kilos, you understandably want to talk about weight, and we will. But I may also want to know about your sleep, your energy, your digestion, your stress, your eating pattern, your movement, your muscle, your health history, medications, hormonal changes. not because I'm trying to make everything complicated and not because every one of those things is causing your weight gain. I'm asking because I need context. If someone tells me I barely eat anything and I'm gaining weight, I don't automatically think, great, let's cut calories further. I want to know what barely eating means. Is breakfast just a coffee? Is lunch at 2 o'clock because she's been in meetings all day? Is she getting home absolutely ravenous? Are weekdays completely different from weekends? Is she eating enough protein and fiber? Has this always been the pattern or is it new? What's happening with sleep, movement? And again, I haven't diagnosed anything. I'm simply refusing to turn one statement into a treatment plan. This is my healing hierarchy. Stabilize, regulate, reclaim, reinvent, rise. And I want you to resist the temptation to look at this and immediately say, oh, I'm definitely regulate. This isn't a diagnostic quiz. This pyramid helps me think about order. It doesn't tell me where you are on it. I still need your story. But it does help explain something important. Sometimes women are trying to solve something at the top while the foundations underneath are still incredibly wobbly. Imagine someone who's sleeping 4 or 5 hours a night, exhausted by lunchtime, running her business and caring for a parent. And she's decided the answer is to add 5 HIIT sessions because her weight isn't shifting, isn't moving. Now, exercise isn't bad, but intensive training on a dysregulated system, adding more physiological demand, the sensible is that going to be the sensible priority in her context? That's the question. Or a woman who is meticulously tracking her macros, but she's so busy that lunch regularly disappears, and by late afternoon, she's absolutely ravenous. Tracking macros isn't inherently wrong, but perhaps the first useful conversation isn't about making her targets even more precise. Or she's buying another menopause supplement because she's convinced hormones explain everything. Remember at the very beginning, like, is it insulin? Is it cortisol? Is it menopause? Is it aging? I'll take a supplement for this. I'll take something to support my thyroid, something to support my adrenals. Right? Looking for an external trigger and looking for a supplement to fix it. But nobody has actually stood back and looked at the wider picture. Supplements can help sometimes, but they're not usually working on the core. Okay, again, I'm not telling you what those women need from 3 sentences. I'm trying to show you why order matters. Because the question isn't just, is this a healthy thing to do? The question is this thing that deserves attention here, now, in this woman's picture? And that's very different. So have a think about it, ladies. Where have you been putting most of your effort? Not which level are you? I'm not asking you to self-diagnose. I want you to ask, where have you been putting most of your effort? And this is probably one of the most important distinctions I can give you. All right. Possible does not automatically mean relevant. And relevant doesn't, that sounded like elephant, and relevant doesn't automatically mean priority. Could stress be affecting a woman's weight? Absolutely possible. Does that mean every woman carrying weight around the middle has high cortisol? No. Could insulin be relevant? Of course. Does that mean I can look at your waistline and diagnose insulin resistance? No. Could menopause be relevant? Obviously it could, but your menopausal still doesn't tell me the whole story. Not every woman who's in menopause has the same symptoms. Not everyone postmenopausal has a weight problem. Not everyone that's postmenopause has hot flushes or sleep disturbances or anxiety or whatever. Your menopause still doesn't tell me the whole story. But this is where health information becomes difficult and a bit muddy, because the internet is very good at telling you what could be happening. And then we recognize 3 symptoms and think, that's me. That's the answer. Maybe. But before I decide that, I want evidence from your picture that makes it worth pursuing. My job isn't to choose the most fashionable explanation. My job is to determine what seems relevant, what deserves priority, and what we still need to know. So when you tell me the symptom, what happens in my head isn't symptom equals answer. It's much messier and much more human than that. I hear what you're telling me, then I start asking questions. What's the wider context? Symptom, questions, context. Are there patterns? Which is why I often introduce something called a health timeline. And what appears relevant? What needs investigating? What can possibly or probably wait? And only then do I start thinking about where to begin. The skill isn't knowing all the things that could be involved. You can Google that. It's working out which ones are relevant, which ones are priorities, and what needs investigating before we decide. And think about how different that is from most online advice. You search, or maybe ask AI, why can't I lose belly fat after menopause? And within seconds, someone has told you the answer. Cortisol, insulin, estrogen, inflammation, slow metabolism. And conveniently, very often the answer is followed by a supplemental program they're selling. Real bodies aren't always that tidy. Notice how much online health advice jumps straight from symptom to starting point without questions, without putting it in context, without looking for a pattern, and without prioritizing. That's a scattergun approach. That's like taking a pill for an ill. Every symptom has a solution. So I want to bring us back to this. Curiosity is not diagnosis. Sometimes good clinical reasoning is actually being comfortable saying, I don't know yet, but I know what I'd want to investigate next. That's not weakness. I won't make up a story. If I don't know the answer, I'll go looking. I get curious. That's what stops us forcing symptoms into an explanation we happen to choose before you walked through the door. And Kathy is a really good example of why this matters, because Kathy wasn't looking for another diet. She thought she knew exactly what she needed, and she thought she needed to try harder. Kathy, in her late 40s, she's running a business, she's holding a lot, she's tired, but slowing down doesn't really feel like an option. Her body has started changing. Her weight isn't responding the way it used to. So Kathy does what Kathy has always done when something isn't working. She works harder. She tightens up the food, adds another training session, gets stricter during the week, pushes through the tiredness, because this strategy has worked in every other part of her life. If the business needs attention, she works harder. If the family needs something, she finds a way. If there's a problem, she solves it. So when her body isn't responding, the assumption becomes, I'm probably not doing enough. But when Kathy came and sat in front of me, my question wasn't, how can I make her exercise plan more effective? It was, what is pushing harder doing in the context of everything else that's happening? Because perhaps this is also the year her sleep deteriorated. Perhaps her workload increased. Perhaps she's sitting at a desk far more often than she used to. Perhaps meals have become functional rather than nourishing because she's squeezing them between everything else. Perhaps she's exercising hard but moving very little during the rest of the day. Perhaps recovery has disappeared. None of those things gives me an instant answer, but they change the questions. So ladies, where in your life have you responded to a body that isn't changing or simply asking more of it? More restriction, more exercise, more discipline, more rules. Now put Kathy beside the frustrated trier, the first lady I talked about. Both could walk into my room and say, I'm doing everything and my weight isn't changing. But look at the difference. Our frustrated trier keeps changing strategies. Something doesn't work, so she finds another answer, then another, then another. Kathy keeps increasing effort. Something doesn't work, she pushes harder. Same presenting complaint, different pattern, different questions, potentially different priorities. And this is exactly why I don't want to give you an answer before I've heard your story, because the answer that sounds brilliant for one woman may be completely irrelevant to the woman sitting next to her. For Kathy, when we looked at everything together, stabilizing before pushing further made sense. Again, for Kathy. Not because stabilize is the answer I give every woman, but because her story supported it. And that's the distinction I really want you to hear. We're not replacing every woman needs to eat less with every woman needs to regulate her nervous system. That would just be another universal answer. We're asking, what does this particular woman's picture tell us deserves attention? And sometimes the picture isn't as clear as Kathy's. Sometimes a woman comes in and there's so many things happening that she genuinely can't tell you where it started. That's our third woman. I want you to understand the intervention that sounds sensible in isolation may not be the right priority in your context. So the third example is, I don't feel like myself anymore. So this woman might not even begin with, I need to lose weight. She might just say, I don't feel like myself anymore. And then as we talk, the pieces start coming out. My weight has gone up. I don't sleep properly. My digestion is all over the place. I've become anxious. My joints ache. My energy's disappeared. My brain doesn't work the way it used to. And sometimes she says it all happened at once. And I completely understand why it feels this way. Because when you're living inside it, you're not documenting the progression. You're getting the children to where they need to go. You're working, you're caring for parents, you're managing the home, you're getting through the day. You don't necessarily notice on Tuesday, the 14th of March, digestion changed. Then 6 months later, sleep, then anxiety. Life, because also when there is little changes over time, you sort of absorb those changes. You don't necessarily put them all together. Right? Life doesn't happen like a clinical timeline. And by the time she realizes she doesn't feel well, there's 6 things shouting at once. That's when she starts trying to fix whichever one is loudest: the weight, the sleep, the bloating, the anxiety. But no one has stood back and looked at the big picture. I'm sure all of you would say you didn't go to bed one day feeling amazing and then wake up the next day feeling like crap with 100 different symptoms. They slowly add one on the other. So with her, I slow down. What do you remember changing? What was happening around that time? So context. What came together? What might have been there earlier that you've simply normalized? And that's a big one. Because women normalize an extraordinary amount. I'm tired, but everyone my age is tired. I wake at 3, but that's menopause. My bowels only move every few days, but they've always been like that. I feel anxious, but hey, life's stressful. I don't recover after exercise anymore, but I'm getting older. Maybe. But I want to hear it. What have you already tried? What happened? And importantly, what haven't we looked at yet? Not what supplement have you bought, what supplement haven't you bought yet? What part of the story hasn't actually been considered? And notice what I'm still not doing. I'm not diagnosing her from the side, diagnosing her from this side. Right? I'm building a picture. That's the work. And sometimes as that picture develops, the things she came in wanting fixed isn't necessarily the place that deserves the first conversation. And this is where something important changes for women, not because I've handed them a magic answer, but because suddenly it isn't just everything is wrong. There's a picture, and there are things that appear more relevant. There are things that can wait. There are things that don't need another intervention. There may be something that needs further investigation. There's an enormous relief in not trying to work on everything at once. For this woman, that was part of the beginning of recognizing herself again. She wasn't just chasing symptoms anymore. And I'm talking about this where the symptoms slowly kept adding one on top of the other. Right? And as I said, the cumulative load of what we do, but also the gradual increase of symptom picture. Right? So as I said, there's enormous relief when I don't say we're going to have to do 50 different things at once. No, we start with what's going to make the biggest difference and we keep adding on to that. We need to recognize what is going on and not just appeal for an ill. We have to understand why we choose what we choose and why the order. And I think that's important because I don't want you following instructions blindly. I want you to understand why this, why now, why not the other 5 things yet. I work in phases, so we've got to get that foundation, that pyramid, we've got to get that foundation right first. And that's where clarity starts giving you some agency back. So now I want to turn this back to you. Think about the things that's bothering you most at the moment. For many of you, that will be weight, because that's what the topic of tonight started off being. But it might be energy. It might be sleep, digestion, anxiety. Whatever it is, ask yourself, what changed? What changed first? If you can remember, what else was happening around that time? What have I already tried? What happened when I tried it? And what haven't I looked at yet? For those of you playing along at home, and you might want a moment to answer those. And you don't need a perfect answer. And these questions aren't here so you can diagnose yourself. They're simply helping you step back far enough to see whether there is a picture you haven't noticed because you've been so busy trying to fix the symptom. Now ask yourself one more question. Can I see a clear, sensible place to begin? Right? Ask yourself, can I see a clear, sensible place to begin? Maybe you can. Perhaps looking at it now, you're thinking, my meals really have become chaotic. Or, I barely move anymore because my work has changed. Or, my sleep has deteriorated enormously and I've been pretending it hasn't. If something simple and sensible is obvious, start there. You don't need to change everything at once. And please don't turn complexity into a reason to do nothing. But perhaps you're sitting there thinking, Sally, that's the problem. I've got the sleep issues and the digestion and the weight and the anxiety and and I'm exhausted. And I've already tried changing my food. And I've already tried supplements and I still don't know which bit matters. That's different because self-recognition is useful. But self-recognition isn't always the same thing as being able to interpret the whole picture from inside it. That's often where another set of eyes becomes valuable. So I want you to think, are you, this is all, the pennies have dropped and I know where to start? Or is it, oh my goodness, I'm ticking so many boxes. I need someone to look from the outside in to help me get clarity. Because you can absolutely spend another 3 months learning. There's no shortage of information. You can listen to another podcast, another menopause expert, take another supplement, try another diet, another reel telling you carbohydrates are the problem, or at the moment, what is it? The carnivore diet, just eat meat, nothing else. Followed immediately by another reel telling you carbohydrates are essential. Another Monday where you decide, right, this week I'm going to be really good. And perhaps 3 months from now, you're standing in exactly the same place asking, but which of these things actually matters for me? That's the cost I'm interested in. Not some frightening prediction about what will happen to your body if you don't act today. The cost of continued guessing. What's going to cost you? Cost you time? Cost you money? Cost you energy? Frustration? And perhaps most importantly, trust in yourself. At some point, more information stops being useful, the useful next step. Sometimes what you need is someone to stand outside the picture with you and ask, what are we actually looking at here? Nikki, the 28-day challenge has helped me organize my life better. Beautiful. Reduce the food choice stresses. Excellent. That's exactly what I wanted. Improve sleep. Showed up. Too little water. Need for regular movement. Strengthening exercise. Loving the transition without worrying about failure. Hallelujah. Love it, Nikki. I think I should screenshot that chat because that has just yeah, you've just put into words a lot of my aims from the 28-day. All right, ladies. So if you're thinking there are several things going on, I've already tried a lot and I still don't know what I'm missing, let's have a conversation. The health clarity call is a short first look at what's happening, what you've already tried, where you're stuck, whether there's a sensible next step, right? You don't need to decide which service you need. That's my job after I've listened to where you're at. So if you want to have a chat, if you know where to start, go for it. If you don't know where to start, and you want to have a chat, that's what this is for. So you can scan that to book that call. Any issues, there'll also be a link in the email with the replay. So I've recorded this and I'll download it. Get a replay. There'll be a link to book a call in that as well. So ladies, I will now go to Q&A, and I will also stop the recording for the questions.